Alex, what did you call it the other day? PIMP?
Yeah.
Personal Intelligence Media Platform? No ads.
No ads.
That's nice.
Sure. It's great because we don't even have to pay for all the tokens we're burning.
Have you tried it again? I just added a new news source to it.
It's really fast.
Let's move through these things quicker. I feel like we need pace.
I agree.
So I'll try to, I don't want to interrupt, but like it's hard sometimes for me to like move things along.
Hey, interrupt the thing we needed.
You can interrupt Alex. Don't interrupt me.
All right, should we get started? I just want to like paint the scene from yesterday at Pura Vida. I go in, okay, I'm waiting in line for my PB Lover acai bowl, which is the best order at Pura Vida. And there's a commotion. I get jostled. I was unhappy about that. And then I turn around and there is an iguana that has entered into the store. I don't know if you guys have had many iguana encounters. They're crazy little creatures and they freaked a lot of people out. And the iguana was by far the most terrified of any creature in that store. And nobody was doing anything. I gotta admit, like I was like, it'll just eventually leave. That was my strategy. Not this hero. This guy came in, he was bussing tables, he took off his apron, he threw the apron onto the iguana, picked it up under its little arms, and calmly carried it out.
I mean, that's the types of heroes we need.
I wish someone would do that with Iran.
I think that's what somebody thought Iran would be like. But my guess is that this happened in Miami, not New York, right?
Yeah, there's no iguanas as far as I know. I don't know if
Mamdani shut the subway down.
Has Mamdani brought iguanas there? Although, weird thing about iguanas is they're an invasive species. They're not native to everything's fake in Florida. And so they're not actually supposed to be here. I mean, nothing against, look, it's not for me to judge, but I'm just saying that they're not like...
Please, you better be careful of
I could put ice on the iguana. So anyway, it all worked out. I gave this guy kudos.
I wish you would take a stand more often, Brian, like you do on our private sessions. Now you won't even insult an iguana.
I'm not
when we're public.
I mean, no, I'm not going to insult the iguana. The iguana is not. It didn't do anything wrong. It didn't want to be there. It ended up there by accident, and everyone won because the tourists all got like an iguana story. And I think that's great. I actually asked the woman to register. You started
the podcast with sort of, whining, cube worker energy. And now you won't go after even the iguana. Except when I call you privately, you're like all over everybody.
The lesson here is not to have any private conversation with Troy.
I think so. I'll try to channel some of that. I don't remember what it's about, but let's get started. Welcome to People versus Algorithms, show about detecting patterns in media technology, culture, real estate, money, geopolitics, iguanas, Strait of Hormuz, monitoring the situation. Welcome, Troy. I'm glad you got your technology sorted out over there. And Alex.
I now have a double monitor set up. And there's a 6-week back order on the Mac Mini, waiting for that. I'm in full vibe code mode now, but I basically destroyed my laptop with all kinds of, Dockers.
I think so. I think you should reconsider this. We might need to buy you a Mac Mini.
I just bought one. It's the wait time. I sent one to my kid too, and her and I are communing around the different apps that we made. She made one yesterday called Film Brain, which allows you to put in what's the repository of film reviews that everybody uses?
Letterboxd.
You probably use it.
Letterboxd.
So she has 1,500 films in her Letterboxd account. You put in your Letterboxd account in her app, and then you describe in natural language what kind of, feeling you're having and what kind of movie you want to watch right now. And it recommends based on your historical consumption. Yeah, it helped me find a movie last night.
I want to get into your little project.
Friday.
You made a lot of progress. I'm impressed by it. But a couple of quick updates. First of all, unfortunately, we had the mixer right after our last recording. And Alex, you didn't make it. Neither did AB. But Troy graced us, the community, with his presence, which was very nice. Unfortunately, by accident, I made Troy wait outside for a little bit.
It was humiliating.
Was it more or less humiliating than that time I sent my AI?
No, it's just when
taker to a
people in
meeting?
line are like, wait, shouldn't you be able to get in?
I wasn't checking my messages. I'm still new to the party planner, thing. So there's some kinks to
You
work out.
become a bit of a kind of nerd celebrity, Brian. They like you, those people.
I know.
They
Yeah.
they really like.
It's good. Anyway, it was a great mixer. Other than the strict bouncing by that cocktail place, but that's what you get.
Did
in
you try?
Gramercy, I
So
guess.
Troy, did you try to say like, was there like a "Do you know who I am" moment there?
No, that's not my.
That's
That
your thing.
Scottish guy,
Yeah.
I don't know if you ran into him. He was very strict. He was very persnickety.
I mean, it was a great party, nice environment. I got to say, the sort of
The food.
commodity meat and cheese tray was
I
a little
know
bit.
that I gotta look again. It's gonna be optimized. There was some meats and cheeses, and I don't know. Maybe I drove home the message too much about cost efficiency on that front because look, the cocktail place is pretty expensive. Anyway, it was a good party. Hope to do more in the future. Will do more in the future.
I'll try to attend.
Did you guys see Paul Brainerd, the maker of PageMaker, died? Only 78 too. That's really young these days. Troy, you had experience with PageMaker. I never used PageMaker. I used Quark.
Yeah, I had a kind of a nostalgic moment when, did you see the video on the page of an old Mac running PageMaker where you had like the text insertion thing that flashed where you loaded all your text into PageMaker and then you insert it into, a page. Just these different, navigational or, tool constructs that were really familiar to me. I don't know. I learned to use and love the Mac with PageMaker. That was my experience. And I was living in I guess I would call it a transitional moment in the newspaper production where we would make pages or columns on the computer with PageMaker. We'd make ads with a different product. We'd print them out on a LaserJet printer, and we would bring them to the paste up table and then roll them onto what are called flats with wax. And then we would drive those flats to the printer and they would use them. They would take pictures of them and turn them into negatives and use them in the printing press. But I don't know. It was just a moment where I looked at it. I was like, oh my God, that was such a long time ago. And I loved PageMaker at the time. It feels so antiquated now. It's like an old car.
R.I.P. PageMaker.
You probably used it, Alex. No, you're a little younger. You maybe
I didn't have a Mac. I wasn't rich enough to own Macs. For me, it was.
They didn't let me near Quark. Like the production people were like,
I think that's good.
Stay away. Stay away. The only time I got to go over to Quark is if words needed to be cut from my story because like some lazy editor would just cut from the bottom. And I'm like, no, you need to use a scalpel.
What did you have if you didn't have a
We
Mac? You had
Quark.
like
I just wrote
no. But Alex said he didn't have a Mac. He couldn't afford one. You just had an old junky PC.
Yeah, and Ventura Publisher was the one.
Okay. Oh yeah.
I mean, all that software was pirated, so it was easy.
You had Corel Draw.
I mean, yeah, sure, but it was a wild thing to change a font on a screen at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Easy to forget, but
We have greatly progressed since then. And now anyone can make software. I mean, you could vibe code PageMaker probably this weekend, Troy. And you have continued. I'm glad I started this and then in true fashion, like basically dropped it myself. But it was really an impetus to get you making software. And you have continued on with your vibe coding project. Please give us an update on, I believe it's called PIMP.
PIMP, the personal, what is it? Personal intelligence media platform, personal information media platform.
Something like that.
Well, let's use that. Well, first of all, what problem is it solving for me? I mean, what I wanted was a project to test all this stuff out on, and I wanted to wade into the world of Cloud Code and all the other coding tools. So the problem is that I love aggregators. I said this last week. The internet's littered with garbage. It's intolerable how bad web pages are. There's so much content to consider. And I wanted kind of one interface that aggregated up all my sources and no junky experience. So, there's been there's been a whole bunch of these sort of news aggregators over the years. If you recall, do you remember the one that Yahoo bought? I think it was called Sumley.
I love Sumley.
British teenager for $30 million.
Yeah.
And he was 17 years old when he sold it to Yahoo. And then more recently,
smart
they bought
kid.
another.
Totally got out of media, even smarter.
Amazing. But there's just been a lot of, media aggregation tools. There's the one was called Artifact that Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger started.
Yeah.
And
Oh, shit, I forgot about that. They sold it to Yahoo, huh?
Same idea, yeah. So basically what I did is I pull in all my sources, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, TechMeme. I do something kind of interesting where I authenticate with cookies before we aggregate and before we summarize. So all of the summary and all of the interface layer presentation is based on full article abstraction, which is kind of cool. It dynamically creates clusters with a little like topical clusters. Like right now it's Iran war, Trump, oil prices, meta, inflation, etc. Those are all created by looking at overlap between articles and sending out requests to Claude Haiku and bringing back topical clusters. I'm talking dirty tech talk now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It sounds like a mainstream activity.
Feeling like I was now overwhelmed with too much information because I had like 20 sources being summarized on a page and then all the topical stuff, I did a couple things. I put a little summarize button that opens up the article in the right window that, like I said, uses Claude or Gemini to summarize the article in that interface, which is useful. I connected it to all my newsletters, so I no longer go into my Gmail box to get my newsletters. I put them all into a bucket, a new newsletter box, and it pulls them all in, and then I can read them in here. I created a thing that summarizes all the day's news in 4-hour increments in one document. So that's like my kind of meta summary. Oh, yesterday I added a nice little feature to cross-reference Kalshi markets with the news. So if there's a market that pertains to a news story, it lists it as a market. And you can see what people are betting on around that news item. I created it with Google Stitch was my design partner, and Claude Code was my coding partner. And I got into a lot of trouble. I'm sure the code is a disaster. I deployed it on something called Railway, which it's like some complicated nerd tool. And I've got my GitHub account, Docker, all this kind of stuff running. And I'm sure that I have huge security vulnerabilities. But anyway, that's what I built.
This is astounding, Troy. This is like, at first when you started talking about it, you had a little bit of the energy of a retiree that just got into remote controlled airplanes.
Ham radio.
Yeah.
Ham radio.
My brother talks about fly fishing this way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I gotta say, like, I until now, I just realized like the amount of, because this is not just like a, type in a prompt and get this done, right? You had to get onto Railway, you got to get a GitHub account, and then the authenticating with your cookies so that you can kind of use stuff behind a paywall. I mean, this is genuinely, and then being able to use a second tool like the Google one to build the UI. I wouldn't even know where to start with this. This is really impressive.
Well, can I tell you what I learned, Alex, from this?
Tell me.
First of all, I learned that the recursiveness of Claude, where it goes back and fixes its bugs, is bananas. So it used to be like you wrote code and then you deployed it and then then you would check if it worked and you would go back. Now the thing is recursive and it's just solving problems all the time. Crazy. Second observation, vibe coding, super fun. It's like ham radio shit for me anyway. You can call it a retired passion. Or
no,
whatever,
I think you took it beyond that.
I think that's an important point, but we can go back to it.
Well, a couple other points is, and this is a long-standing observation, is the back and forth between what you want and technology. Brian, it's like when you said yesterday that you want to build your own CRM. The key with this is that I keep using it and seeing that it doesn't work the way I want it to, or it's not solving my problem, and I immediately change the functionality or the design. And so the relationship between product and building is the sort of secret of a great craftsperson. Okay. Like just constantly being able to make something.
That's right.
I want to get onto AI Slop, but I guess what I want to know is through this process, has it changed how you view the diffusion of this technology and whether this is going to become a more regular thing? Because I mean, my belief is that maybe 10% of the population wants to do this. Maybe.
Well, what the companies like Lovable have already extended app development into a new audience, right? Because it's made it really easy to build and deploy apps. And it's, I don't know, they have like $1 billion run rate. It's like a material company now. I would say that we're creating an entirely new concept of how you build tools around your needs. And obviously, tool makers are going to make it more and more accessible to people that are less technical than I am to build stuff like, and you're going to see, remember, Brian, there's a good example is home automation. There's I have a lot of home automation stuff, and a lot of the tools are the apps that you need to control your lights or your music or whatever it is you have home automation for, the temperature of your house, whatever, are really bad. They're really, really bad apps. And what's going to happen is my next project is going to sniff out all of the home automation items that are on my home network and build a text-based interface with OpenClaw that I can just text like whatever I want, change the temperature, turn the lights on, turn the coffee machine on. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that do this. And I think that it's the reason why Anthropic made such a good choice in being the kind of alpha coding partner. Because that's not just for coders anymore. It's for a much larger part of the population.
Yeah, I would, Brian, we don't need the majority of people to move into this. We're talking about going from 0.01% of the population being able to do this to 1% of the population being interested in doing this. That's hugely disruptive, And what Troy did, sounds complicated. Now it'll become easier and easier because a big part of probably what you did, Troy, is help the machine help you scope out the product, right? Like, hey, what are the steps? Let's talk about it first.
It helped me write the PRD, Alex,
Exactly.
And it certainly helped me navigate the sort of what's called the DevOps questions.
Right, and also, right, I had Claude build its own skill, etc. And then there's new tools coming out, and I was going to propose that one to you, Troy, but I think you're way beyond that. But Perplexity Computer is no joke, a miracle. It uses every LLM, and it essentially runs in the background, and it will just build tools for you. Brian, I would just try an account and see, hey, I need a CRM, and that thing will just keep asking you questions until it works.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a try. I don't want to use Perplexity Computer. I don't like that guy.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, just as a reason.
I don't want him to win. I like to root for people who are likable to win. I don't like him.
Two things, one for you, Brian, and one for you, Alex. One is that, per your question, Brian, my token usage went up 100x yesterday in the last 3 days. So if 1 to 10% of people,
I think every time I click around, then I'm costing you money.
Well, you're sucking up my tokens, but it's the dev tokens that went through the roof because I was developing so much. So that's the first one. The second one is in my daughter who built Film Brain last night. Her and her boyfriend, he's an engineer, she's a financial analyst. They're both pretty technical. I said, my friend Brian needs a new CRM. Can you build it for him?
Oh, really?
Like these are not people that wouldn't consider themselves developers, but now they're so deep into this cloud stuff they could help define your requirements and build you a CRM.
Yeah, it's absolutely disruptive because even if you don't want to do it, the cost is going to be just like basically reduced to pennies. Right?
Well, I told them to charge you $50,000, but like
was that before or after you were like stuck outside?
$50,000. I don't know about that. Although I wasted nearly as much trying to regularly develop a CRM last year. Let's talk about AI's slop problem because OpenAI is shutting down Sora after just a year. And hilariously, just 3 months after it made a deal with Disney, a $1 billion deal.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be for 3 years.
Which was never fully ratified. Apparently, Disney folks were having meetings at OpenAI about half an hour before.
Just hilarious. And the entire last generation was these media companies basically playing Charlie Brown, trying to kick the football with big tech, playing the Lucy part. constantly pulling it back and sending media companies flying. This does say something, I believe, about AI and where it is going. The focus is on the enterprise more than consumer, it seems. Alex, what's the significance of this?
OpenAI has done this pivot into enterprise because they're realizing they're getting their asses kicked by the Anthropic team. And so they probably want all that compute back. And Sora is probably very, very intensive compute-wise. And they're, obviously the thing it wasn't as successful as they were expecting it to be. So
it was super expensive too.
Super expensive to run. So, but it
Fat
also
Troy. Didn't you use it to create Fat Troy? I mean, Fat Troy alone probably cost OpenAI like $1 million.
Yeah, probably.
I made Fat Troy, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I would say that what we're also seeing is just a consumer response to kind of this broad category of AI slop, where consumers are just saying no to it or not really entertaining this as a valuable part of their media diet. So sure, things will come up. We'll laugh at Fat Troy, but I don't think this is a business. This is something we talked about before. If you have the ability to create all this content, it becomes very valueless. And the thing that you will attach value to is the person behind it, right? I think our relationship with media has been that since the beginning. This is why we have stars in movies. This is why we like reality TVs. We like seeing the people behind the thing. And this AI stuff is not like the consumers are not falling in love with it. Like, and I put in that category.
I'm falling in love with it. I actually don't. I think we should be careful that we dismiss all of it.
I'm not.
I really like those.
You're on record as being pro slop. I got it.
Well, I like the fruit and vegetable people in Instagram.
You're hitting that age where you're going to be liking the shrimp cheeseless videos.
Where do you? Is it on Facebook?
No. I also like that. I also, and I think you would too, Alex. I like the Chinese cat dramas.
I don't.
I like Chloe versus History. It's an AI influencer that they drop into like Pompeii, and she's like, "Oh my God, guys, this place is incredible."
But I think the way we're experiencing this is like we really have to start talking about like what is the value of media, right? Like when the film camera was first invented, people would line up to watch a train arrive at the station, right? But then once that was commoditized, there's no more value because we crave novelty, we crave the human connection, and these things destroy all that. So if you're going to build a platform that
have you seen the Fruit People videos?
No, but let's look at Disney for a second.
This is why I'm a party planner. I mean, what are you talking about? I'm like the least likely party planner in the world. Like, yes, I know, Alex.
But let's look at Disney, for example. I think the AI psychosis has infected the entire executive class in media, right? Like Apple has done the dumbest shit ever by trying to respond to AI. All its little notification summaries are hilarious. All the things that tell you, you should respond to your friend like this. I think all of those things are slop. People are not liking it. They're not responding to it. They're fully saturated with it. So consumers have been exposed to it, but they don't really want to pay for it. And Disney, if we remember, when VHS tapes came out, Disney maintained a stranglehold on that distribution by creating scarcity. So you would only get Sleeping Beauty. They would release it. It would be a huge fucking deal, right? And all of a sudden here, they were ready to let you like hang out with Winnie the Pooh and Yoda. And this idea that people are going to love this and it's going to be beneficial to your brands, to your IP, that people are going to pay for this stuff is insanity. Nobody's going to pay for this. Right? People might giggle. Troy, you wouldn't pay a subscription to watch your fruit videos. And they're noticing right now that this is a huge money sink that has no consumer value. And if anything is IP destructive.
Yeah. So like what I think is interesting is how this shift to the enterprise to me is leaving behind, they lost the consumer. Like AI is polling. I saw an NBC News poll. It's polling below ICE for popularity. Still above the Democratic Party, but it's below ICE. And, I saw this viral clip that was going around of the CNN interview with this Kentucky farmers, and they refused to sell their farmland to
$26 million, right?
a big tech company think it was Google, for $26 million. It was about like 10x like what the price. And this thing's been watched like 13 million times. And they basically told them, take your money and go stuff it. Like, this is our land. And they asked the woman, the matriarch, who's like 82 years old. And she's like sitting there, and the interviewer is asking her, they say the data centers are going to bring a lot of jobs to the community. I just saw her like eyes narrow and her lips purse. And I was like, ooh, I've seen this with octogenarians before. This is not going to go over well. And it did go over well. She had said
she called it a scam.
She called it a scam, and basically that these people are liars. Now that resonated, it seems. She said, I say they're a liar and the truth isn't in them, which is a very Kentucky thing.
Imagine this, right? Imagine this, a product that's being pitched by the most dislikable people you ever had, a band of like totally dislikable billionaires. And the pitch is, it's going to take your job, right? It's bad for the environment. And also, if we really reach our goals, it might destroy the world. Like, who wants that? And
but that's not a pitch problem. That's a product problem. The problem is the product itself is going to accrue power to the already powerful. And it's going to be used as an extractive technology, and it's going to be anti-worker. I mean, there's no positive story to tell. This isn't a marketing problem.
I mean, this is why we're getting like more union talk in Silicon Valley than we ever had. All the people that thought that they were
lovely.
A special class of employee are now seeing themselves as workers. But the thing is, the product is also not good. Like if the product, because consumers like don't really care about the environment or about like the politics. If the product was as useful and as great for people as they say were, then people would be flocking to it. And it's not a distribution problem, because every fucking app you open is trying to pitch you on their AI tools. Everybody's inundated with it. And so when we hear like Andreessen or whoever these folks are, talk about the media being the ones to blame or consumers not fully understanding it, that's crazy talk. Meanwhile, yes, absolutely, Troy can build this app. This is where...
Yeah, I think we need to split this up into different... Because AI is so all-encompassing and so sort of socially impactful, there's the overall governance, kind of geopolitical, social layer, which is really complicated, and I think that people are really nervous about that. There's, AI in media, which we just finished talking about, which I totally agree with you, Alex, is robbing media of important human signal that makes it, and scarcity that makes it wonderful. And then there's the rewiring.
And valuable and financially valuable.
And then there's the kind of complete rewiring of all of the sort of software that has driven our interaction with so many things in the world. And, that starts on your phone, and it continues to enterprises. And I think that part is not going to slow at all. And I do think you'll see the kind of, human impulse fight back in media, but like the idea that we can build our own interfaces, that the world of technology is open to a much broader group of people, that we are not going to be hostage to SaaS companies, that we can rethink how people interface with organizations, with government using software, that we can clean up like decades of legacy code that prevent us from building good products. Like all of that is going to be a function of AI's proliferation, and that ain't going away.
No, I mean, if anything,
I'm going to go out to Lincoln Road and road test that with some tourists, see how that resonates.
Well, you didn't ask me to put it into a consumer message, Brian, right?
Well, it's just not a winning message out there. And I don't think and that's why they're going to the enterprise, is because like the boss class loves this stuff.
But imagine how it is for people signing the checks. It's completely irresistible, this idea that you could create free content without having to deal with pesky creators, right? To generate free engagement that you fully control and can put ads against an infinite surface area. The problem is like none of these people understand culture and understand what attracts us to culture, right? But meanwhile, yes, there is a the consumer class is like completely going counterculture on that. And I expect like a lot of these platforms like YouTube and Reddit are going to invest a lot to filter out slop, because I think it's hurting those platforms. Meanwhile, the stuff that's happening with Claude Code, with the Perplexity computer stuff, with the OpenClaw stuff, right? Of having the agentic future that they were talking about like 9 months ago, right? That is very real, and that will transform many people's lives. I think it's that's where.
So on the filtering thing, it's pretty obvious they're not going to be able to filter out the bad stuff. They're going to have to validate the quote unquote good stuff, and that is going to lead to all kinds of facial recognition that prove you're a human. So all the stuff that right-wing people were terrified about vaccine passports. By the way, what happened to that? Turns out there wasn't an authoritarian plot, I guess. I don't know. All that stuff is going to come to roost with this, because these are creating the problems that are going to be solved with mass surveillance. There's no way that this does not become that. And the reason that it's not popular is I think people sense that. They sense this is not going in a direction that they would like. And by the way, they were never asked if they want this stuff.
Do you think people are thinking that far ahead? To me, I just feel like people don't really enjoy it. Yesterday I was on a Reddit forum for like a good 25 minutes where people were discussing whether video of a mantis shrimp attacking a crab was AI or not. It was a long conversation, and marine biologists had to come in and say, well, it wouldn't create these bubbles. So at the end of the day, it was agreed that it was probably AI. But I don't think that people really are thinking that far ahead. I don't think they're thinking about the environment. I don't think they're thinking about the mass surveillance. I think they just look at this stuff and they chuckle, and then they see 2 of it and they're like, okay. And then they see 3 of it and they see their feed like filled with this stuff and say, this brings no value to me. I am done with this. It feels like, when the internet was just like 80% Rickrolling videos, we all had a chuckle, but at some point it was too much. And I think at this stage, people are just like, stop trying to tell me how to respond to this email. Stop showing me this junk. Stop making me do the extra work of having to figure out, is this real or not? Like, why are we having to do all that? And they're saying, take all this stuff away from me. Don't charge me more for it. I don't want it. And I think that's where because I think people will tolerate a lot for convenience, right? People will tolerate a lot for convenience. They will give away their privacy. They will turn a blind eye. Look at DoorDash, look at Amazon. They will turn a blind eye to all sorts of things that are happening, right? Like, but if the product is bad, if the reaction is like this, it's just people don't want this shit.
All right, AB's here. Let's do some media stuff. We need to do some media stuff.
Sorry for ranting.
It's just too depressing, to be honest with you.
Well, it's also very exciting. I mean, AB missed the whole part where Troy used his skills to build a media product I would honestly pay for. 6 months ago, I would have paid for this. I said, this is a really great thing.
God bless
Troy
you,
built.
Alex. God bless you, man.
I love you, Troy.
Okay, listen, the other one, and the meta decision is also important, Brian.
Oh, God, we didn't even do the Meta decision. So,
wow.
yeah, Meta and YouTube were found liable for, interestingly, addictive design features. I think it's very telling that they got sued on a case that was modeled off the tobacco industry lawsuits. They claim individual harm from addictive aspects of social media. I mean, the money awarded was pretty trivial, particularly when you're these companies. Meta wants to be a $9 trillion company in 5 years. Why not?
It's the first of many, though. It's the first of many.
Right, but it's sidestepping 230, and that's the big thing.
Yes, because it's going past. It's not attacking them on content, and it's attacking them on UI and UX, which is wild for me, being a UI designer, having spent so much of my career trying to get people to pay attention to the work.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if they go back and they start to look at all of the different design choices made. You could be at The Hague.
I mean, we had this conversation all the time. Interface design is, and I had this conversation with my team sometimes, like interface design is manipulative, and we have to be careful and mindful of how we use these manipulative powers, because you can prioritize certain things, hide certain things, you can get people down a path. And I always talk to folks from my team that used to work at Facebook and Meta and said, like, how could you do this? Because But the outcome could be that, in 3 years' time, we don't have an infinite scrolling feed anymore.
Crazy.
Right?
Okay.
That would be wild.
terrible. I mean, I don't know if that.
I mean, you're addicted.
I would build
You're addicted to X, Brian. I'm
not addicted. I can quit
You
anytime.
are. Yeah. Do you see it? Like, what all your listeners, his eye just twitched. What is AB?
I like their filtering. I like the filtering feature. I think the biggest problem on X right now for me is it's the incentives that they've set on that platform, and people just respond to incentives. So I notice a lot of the Iran war coverage has gotten like really far into misinformation, usually at the hands of these like financial accounts, like Walter Bloomberg, Unusual Whales, and all this. Like, they're just using a war as more engagement bait, and then to basically sell something else. They all have like undisclosed marketing partnerships, and I think this is all part of people feeling like they're in such a rip-off economy. Because I watched that Louis Theroux Manosphere documentary. I don't know if you guys saw it. It was kind of it wasn't great, but like there was like some B and C tier Manosphere guys. What was striking to me is they're all front businesses for some kind of multi-level marketing scheme. Whether it's crypto or whether it's some kind of like course, and there's always something kind of scammy in the background.
I mean, 100%.
Of a lot of these
all the gurus, it's all an extractive trick, right? I mean, even all the kind of like self-help gurus that aren't Manosphere, even Huberman, right? Like it's all like a scheme to sell you something,
supplements,
and extract. Yeah, sure.
One other thing on media: the Economist editor-in-chief Zanny Minton-Beddoes Minton. She went into the octagon with Tucker Carlson, and I mean, I give the Economist a lot of credit for using its live show to be newsier. I'm not going to kill them for platforming Tucker Carlson. He's like, I don't know, what are his Kalshi odds of being like the next president of the United States? I mean, it's not out of the question, honestly.
It would be hard. Just to hear voice more would be difficult.
But like, what was really striking there is just the different styles of like institutional media and whatever they're calling this new media world. It's totally different. And the institutional media has to learn how to compete on that level. CNN is doing this ridiculous thing that I hope they will stop very soon, where they're having like Jake Tapper do a show from his office with like a giant podcast mic, and they're putting giant mics around. And you can imagine how this happens. Someone in a meeting was like, oh, well, let's take on the aesthetics and trappings of the podcast world. Meanwhile, the podcast world has pivoted to these very boring and dull like set designs with two ferns. And so they're going in an opposite direction. And I think both are missing the point. Like, it's not about the aesthetics of UGC. I think that is winning in the marketplace.
We agree. Shall we move on to AB?
Yeah, AB.
Yeah.
Welcome. Let's talk Vox Media. So Vox Media is not selling its podcast business. Semaphore reported that it tried to sell its podcast network. Then it was like, hey, if you want, we'll sell you the whole thing. We'll sell you pieces. Not a positive sign there. What is the value of that kind of business and we've given it a lot of credit, and I think it deserves it, as it has adopted more of being a talent business. Those are different types of businesses, and the individual talent, whether it's Karish Swisher or Scott Galloway, are obviously very valuable. I'm not sure if the network is as valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a bunch of these recent podcast deals. I think they're all a little bit different in that sometimes they're around like a brand that's not just a person, but more of like a genre. And the valuations can vary widely because sometimes the investor or who's ever buying it is getting the benefit of longer term guaranteed revenue deals with like SiriusXM, where Sirius says, hey, we'll sell your ads and we'll guarantee this level of placement as long as you keep driving the audience. I think with the Vox one, I think people saw it as like, okay, if we unplug these different shows from Vox, like what are we actually going to get? I think in the Kara Swisher and the Scott Galloway podcast is probably weighted to most of the advertising revenue for that podcast network. And so I think it's a little bit tough. Like they have a bunch of other, I think they probably have like 10 other podcast brands, but I think as people looked at that, they were trying to figure out what are we actually going to get in terms of valuation. I think it's like normal media valuations. Like it's like you're hoping the audience continues to show up and there's some growth there. I think where you've seen higher valuations is an opportunity around a genre to build other things. So an app, other ways to monetize the audience, live events, things like that. But I don't think Kara and Scott were going to give up that part of their business. I think what Vox was selling was primarily the audio product.
Mm-hmm. Troy?
There were a few early deals that AB referenced that were part of the frothiness of early podcasting. I think that Kara and those are, I think outliers now. I think if you're buying a podcast business, it is a talent management business and an ad network. And I think there's value in that because in order to pay your guarantees to your talent, you have to have predictable revenue momentum, relationships, know how to bundle the products and all of that. I think there's probably some concern in the case of the Vox Media Podcast Network. What happens when you carve that out of the media brand and the rest of media publishing, and presumably where does the right to use use the brand and the IP go? Can you still do events? How do you cross promote? I mean, I think it's kind of a complex relationship. That said, there is good reason that I think someone would buy, a podcasting business anchored by, some of the best talent in podcasting. And I also think inevitably it's a game of concentration where a big podcast like Pivot, which is Scott and Kara's podcast, I think that in podcasting, there's always going to be one that's responsible for a huge percentage of your distribution. So, I don't think it's over, by the way. I think that Jim Bankoff, the CEO of Vox, has to kind of figure out what's next for that company. He's got investors that want some type of outcome, and he's got Penske invested in it, I think about 20 points of the company, and he's been working at it for a long time. I suspect you'll see a transaction in the future, and that this reporting isn't complete.
Have we heard any, and maybe AB might know some of that, but have we heard any of the numbers that we're throwing around or who some of the potential buyers are? It's really hard for...
I know, but I can't talk about it.
Oh, come on.
No fun. Some bullshit.
The good podcast deal that was really interesting is when Fox bought Red Seat Ventures, and they effectively got back like the whole squad of people that got kicked off Fox for one reason or another, like Bill O'Reilly. Right. So that was a really interesting deal because they basically brought back, and they're not necessarily going to go on Fox News, but they tapped into that revenue. It's all probably the same advertisers. So there's a lot of synergy there. But that was I think one of the more interesting podcast deals that it did get some attention. But I think the reality there is they brought back some of these people that may not show up on TV as much anymore, but it have the same audience, right? It's a little bit more fringe. And so they got back like Megyn Kelly, like all the people that used to be on Fox, they brought them back into the ecosystem basically through a different door.
And do we know if, is like, could Netflix be one of the buyers? Like, and Netflix has been moving into that space? It's just like a cheap way to make content.
It's really strategic.
It could.
I wish we never sold the Vox.com domain, Troy.
That was a tragedy.
Sure. Okay.
Beautiful three-letter domain.
Hey, you had that?
Or had the...
I think this thing that surprises me, to your point, Brian, in terms of the formats is like Joe Rogan, whatever number, top 5 podcasts in the world. It's like very few people copy the way that he sits. And most of the video is like between the two ferns, which is awkward, right? It's like like you see the person's full body, like the microphones are there, where I'm surprised most people don't use the table.
I think this shift from in the podcast aesthetic to like anonymous sets is strange and misplaced, but
I think a lot of that comes from it's important when you look at the podcast economy to understand how important clipping is part of it. and a lot of these are recorded to be broadcast on YouTube at 16:9 and then clipped on Instagram in portrait mode. And so when you're sitting down or you have a further back shot, these can be cut differently and they work better clipped. I think that there's something there.
We have to up our clips game. I've been trying to. I'm recommitted to LinkedIn.
Wow.
AB gave me grief because I don't have the premium. Literally LinkedIn. Look, I know people it's the most unusable product. I'm just shocked at how bad the product is. It makes Microsoft Teams look like Troy's PIMP. It is horrific. It's a horrific product to use.
The reason it's a horrific product isn't the product, actually. It's like that saying, it's not the band I hate, it's their fans. The problem with LinkedIn is all of the guck and nonsense and crap that comes from the professional class trying to market themselves. It's disgusting.
No, there's something deeper there.
I'm sorry, Troy, that no longer counts. These companies, through the algorithm and the user experience, have full control over the incentives of their user base. They're in full control. So
this product's genesis is professional updates, Alex.
Sure, but I think at some point, I think at some point you can do. There are so many parts of this product that are badly designed. Some folks that were on my team are working at LinkedIn now, so maybe they'll hear.
Are they? Tell them to work harder.
Yeah, I mean, do you have a concrete list of grievances? Because if you just don't.
It's an endless list of grievances. I can't even use the desktop. I've talked with LinkedIn about this. I can't use the desktop version. I can only use the app. I can't get this premium account. It won't let me. It's oops, that doesn't work.
My man, I know you don't want to use Perplexity Computer, but one of the examples I saw somebody make was a CRM that checked his Gmail and his LinkedIn, and then within a single interface allowed him to manage his entire LinkedIn communication. It's here.
Look, I want to commit to it. I want to try to use it. My profile views are way up. I don't know what that means, but
nice.
TBD.
You need my daughter to build you a social CRM, Brian.
You're an influencer.
Okay. Where do you want to go next, Troy? I mean, I can go at a lot. We've got a lot of stuff left.
We do. I mean, you made a point about how Wired's doing a nice job. That's an interesting conversation.
I do. I mean, they got a nice little profile. And I think Wired is it's at an interesting inflection point because, Katie Drummond has remade it into a check on Tech Power. And there's a lot of old heads who don't like this, and particularly people who have a vested interest in marketing their technology because they just want to be fawned over. It's a massive power center. It deserves scrutiny. And I think Wired has done a really nice job, and it's helping them to shift this business to being subscription first. And I think that's a much better place than relying on an events or conference hustle where you're basically in bed with the people you're covering. I mean, you depend on them at the end of the day, and you can't be as much a check on power. I mean, Kara Swisher pulled it off as best as anyone has, and I don't think it would be possible today. She couldn't have been as critical as she was of the tech industry and run a massive tech conference today. The tech people will just make their own conferences, or they would just ignore it.
It's interesting to contrast it with The Verge, because
which is down 85% in pages.
It's being that kind of whatever the evolution of a tech site is in a subscription proposition, being real critical news voice on tech and society, I think is. And I just would contrast Wired with, Nilay Patel's kind of sanctimoniousness and how it's become a bit of a parody of itself. And I think that it's really smart what Wired has done, because it's essential for somebody. And when it's essential for somebody, and when it's real reporting and a critical perspective, you can build a subscription business, and that feels smart to me. And if you look at their headlines, just in the last couple of hours, I'm just looking at my PIMP, ARM CEO insists the market needs his new CPU. It could piss everyone off. Anduril's real war with itself. Why ICE is allowed to impersonate law enforcement. the government's shittiest website. Like they're out there fighting. I think that it appeals to people.
Yeah, there's a place for that. The Atlantic is setting sail. The pivot to events has now gone to sea. The Atlantic has a pretty interesting deal with Seabourn Cruise Line. I think that's an upscale one. It's not Carnival. The Atlantic is going to program events on cruise ships. They're also doing a 12-day cruise, which sounds a lot, to be honest with you. From Montreal to Boston. I would have thought you could get there a lot quicker, but they're tying it into their subscriptions. And this is kind of interesting.
What a great idea. I love this idea.
What makes it great?
I mean, if you have a powerful media brand that actually is a congregation point for a community and they want to talk about shit like seemingly the Atlantic audience does, throw them on a boat. I mean, I kind of would go to that.
Yeah.
I think
what I like about it is they push the infrastructure.
12 days. You could imagine.
I don't know if Nick Thompson, it's for their anniversary. I don't know if Nick Thompson's going to do it because he's like a big runner. So I don't know if he's going to be running.
They'll just helicopter him in for like 2
tough.
days and then take him out.
It is interesting on this 12-day cruise. They don't talk about any of the content. I don't. Maybe there's a different page that I'm missing, but it's just about this kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think
TBD.
They'll end up programming it, but I think what to me, like what I like about it is like the Atlantic blew up its like events business a little bit early on when Lorraine Powell Jobs like took it over, and pushing off all of the organizing stuff to a cruise line or something like this makes a ton of sense, because if you want to be in that business, you're going to be in that business hardcore. I mean, look, I didn't get the meats and cheeses right. Like there's a lot of details in the events business that are different, so good for them. I'm not going to be on that cruise.
You should come. We'll go together. What did you think of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue?
Well, I mean, it's 62 years old now.
So
it's obviously lost its staying power. It's a very strange franchise now. I mean, I remember it as a kid. My mailman would eagerly thumb through it by the time I got it. My mother would then discover it, and she complained actually to Sports Illustrated, canceled my subscription. I mean, Elle Macpherson launched her career off that. I mean, a lot of famous people did. Now they're trying to take a weird, I guess it's not weird, but they have like Bethany Frankel and whatnot. I guess posing. I'm not sure what to call it in there. I don't know. Tough franchise to pull off. I think that these things should, like, it's okay to like let things go, isn't it?
Just drop it.
Like, do things have to last forever? Like, am I going to die with the 30 under 30 continuing?
Yep, you are. But what did you think of the strategy of this?
What
Did
are
you like that they put Bethany Frankel in there and some other sort of unexpected models?
I don't think anything of the strategy. I think it's like a zombie franchise that is in extraction phase of its life. So whatever works. It will never return to when it was like a cultural touchstone. And at least for me, like it's kind of like, it's a little bit sad. And so I think that's with a lot of like media, it's like trying to mine these old franchises that have completely lost their relevance. I mean,
speaking of surreal media moments,
depressing.
Brian, I was surprised to see a advertisement on Fox News for the Kids Guide to President Trump, which is a print publication that you can order. It's a gift bundle, and you scan it on the commercial.
It's more than a print publication.
Yeah, it's a way of life. It's a mindset.
Yeah.
And I don't know what comes in the bundle, but I suspect that they're profiling your parents, or your parents are obviously ordering it or your grandparents are ordering it because they're watching Fox News. But the Golden Age of America edition is out now. What really was Alex called it like full North Korean shit, but it is bizarre to see the government using media like this. It's so shameless and so tacky.
Yeah. Well,
it's like a coloring book. You get the color and the Iran targets. Is this sponsored by the government or this is third party?
No, it's not sponsored. I mean, it's actually possible, but I don't think it is. Did you see the humanoid robot at the White House yesterday with Melania? It was it was the first time a humanoid robot at least known, at least in public, has publicly appeared at the White House. And this humanoid robot, his name is Plato, and the robot's going to replace teachers. So there's that. I'm sure that will be very popular. Final thing is reality TV. New York Times reports that the number of unscripted series has plummeted by a third since 2022. This is no surprise. Reality TV has lost to UGC. You can just stream reality TV now. I mean, you don't need to watch The Simple Life with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie. This is sort of an inevitable. I guess we're just seeing the end of a lot of these old franchises and shticks from media's past.
Rip.
Anything on that? Rip.
No, other than
You weren't
what are
a
the
big
ones
fan
those-
of reality TV?
No, those dating ones have survived, right? Love Island, they've done okay.
Yeah, but The Bachelorette, I think, is not doing well. All right, should we do good product?
Just quickly related to the reality thing, do you remember when Food Network was absolutely the juggernaut in cable television? And now, you remember the guy who hosted Iron Chef? What's his name? Alton Brown?
Alton Brown.
Is now making really good YouTube content. It's the world changed.
Oh, really? He was like one of those like science guys. He was like science and food. He had a shtick. That's the thing. Is you need to niche down. One of the things I've noticed on Instagram is I get placed into all kinds of weird segments. And I'm in a segment of like, you're married to or part of like a Balkan Eastern European world. And so it's all of this thing. It's like, oh, like an Eastern European parent does all of these things. And like, there's entire set of influencers that are focused on like Balkan content, in English, right? Like there's like second generation. And then there's now like American or just English speaking non-Serbian influencers who are I get dumped into this. They're like living in Belgrade and doing the like whispering into a little microphone about like things around Belgrade. And it's more competitive in pretty much every field, I think, right now.
Totally.
Basically. Okay, one final thing. So there's this company, MarketBeat. Do you know it, Troy?
No.
Oh, it's a good company. It's based out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It's run by this guy, Matt Paulson. He's a prolific X guy. I like him. He's very opinionated, and I don't want to say shameless, but like he has a playbook and he runs it. And MarketBeat is one of these fin pubs, and I don't know how to describe it. Like they basically, it's ads and subscriptions, but they buy a ton of traffic, and then they're able to, I call it arbitrage, but AB doesn't like when I call it arbitrage. Wildly profitable. They're like a $50 million business, like 15 or 50% margins. We talk a lot about these dying media businesses. Right? This guy's in Sioux Falls. They're selling like stock tips and whatnot.
Oh yeah, that's been a good business forever.
Yeah.
That's the age.
It was a good business in the original newsletter. You would like print them out and like send them.
Yeah. Even when...
so he's got a private jet.
Investments famously had theirs. They grew out of advertisements in Forbes that became a huge financial management company.
AB, break down this business model. Is this like something that like regular media can learn from? Because this is an exurb of media.
So the reason why I think it's so valuable in the subscription space, because I was looking at the MarketBeat subscription, is like $250 a year, right? And so there's always been people investing out of their personal account. I think it got more prolific with like Robinhood, with younger people doing it. But if you're going to invest $10,000 in a company and hope for it to double, why wouldn't you buy a subscription? So a lot of it is the ARB stuff, because you'll see the display ad that says, hey, here's the 5 stocks that Warren Buffett is investing in and he's not telling you about, or something like that. There's all these like simple funnels that are disguised as like alpha, in terms of like giving you a market edge. I think a lot of people turn on those subscriptions and forget about it. Most of the data that these platforms get is free to access. Like you can find it on Yahoo Finance or Google Finance, but there's a few companies in this space that have done pretty well where they got hung up before. So like when the market goes up, it basically pulls forward a lot of the subscription revenue, right? So it's like when the market goes up, more people are investing, more people buy these subscriptions. And then when it goes down or it's not doing well, people cancel. And so I think MarketBeat's just done well. Like you said, it's in a small town. They have a small team. It's not hard to produce this content because there's like, you're not having geniuses write it. You're just talking about the companies and giving a different perspective. And no one is ever graded on their picks. They might say they are, but they're just talking about 10 different companies a day. So there's a bunch of companies in this space. I think what gets interesting is there's some smaller ones that are doing interesting things with sort of AI coded tools that either tie into your current portfolio or basically look at the data in different ways. And I think it's one of the easiest places to pick up consumer subscriptions.
Well, yeah,
because people tie
that's a great point, AB. And I think that the real key to this business is if your LTVs based on the 250 and retention rate are high enough, you can pay to buy subscribers. And you can't do that in most media businesses because your subscription is, under $100 a year.
So this might be outdated, but this is from November in 2025. The company has 20 full-time employees and 10 freelancers compared to Hearst. I mean, this is where the money is in these businesses. Like media, yeah, it's still valuable if you do this kind of stuff, for sure. And he's on like tons of podcasts. He went on this podcast, MoneyWise. Have you ever listened to MoneyWise?
No.
Great podcast concept. Sam Parr, who founded The Hustle, now has Hampton, which is a private community for entrepreneurs. He's like, he came into money and he's like, I never had money. I didn't think about it. And nobody talks about it. And so the whole thing is basically rich people who didn't start out rich talking like openly about how much they're worth and how they spend their money, how they invest it and everything. Great concept. People love to hear that kind of stuff.
Good concept.
But he was on it talking about his setup, and he's on a lot of different podcasts. Interesting character. Good for them. I mean, it stands in contrast to a lot of these other businesses that are, their revenue per employee is just incredibly low. And I still think that is like I don't know what the definition of new media is, but I know that you need a high revenue per employee. Is that a bad benchmark to use? Maybe.
I think it's a perfect one. But the problem is a lot of these media companies are facing. They don't want to guide their business by because it's a tough metric. I think the nice thing about this space specifically too is that the larger financial publications view it as kind of icky in terms of talking about like stock picking, and so you're never worried about the Wall Street Journal coming and taking your business because they're just not. They don't want to get into this business.
No, it's too sketchy, right?
Yeah, but no, I think revenue per. I mean, Troy, you guys both ran media companies, so I think revenue per employee is a good metric.
I just think a lot of these companies still. It just takes too many people to create too little value in a lot of these companies. I was amazed. S4 is 6,500 employees for a $250 million market cap company. This is on the agency side, right? Like, how's that work?
Can we go to good product now, Brian?
Sure.
Obviously, this is influenced by the discussion we had early on. We are moving into a high leverage world. And that means your responsibility as an individual is to create that $1 million per head media company or to create that Sioux Falls $50 million company. These are high leverage companies, and increasingly there's going to be lots of jobs and lots of opportunities for people that use new tech to create maximum leverage. And that's like, how many tokens did you use today? And I used a lot of tokens. And I think that, your ability to put the machines to work for you make you a high leverage person. So to me, the good product and the revelation of the week for me is just how powerful all this vibe coding stuff is. And that we're on the precipice of a very new way of thinking about personal productivity, about software, about SaaS businesses, about the relationship between the people with the ideas, the product people connected to the business, and the people that make it, the technologists. And I think it's going to move both ways. I think increasingly technologists are going to become more product planning, and the product people are going to get deeper and deeper into technology. And we're going to completely reconsider the lines between these groups. So that's the other thing. But I would say that my good product this week, Brian, is an ode to eating at the bar. I don't know if I've highlighted that before. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I did it yesterday or day before at Minetta Tavern. I had their, I guess, famous hamburger at the bar at Minetta. And, you know, Minetta's obviously an institution at this point, and the bartenders are, you know, old-fashioned-y. You know, there's, you know, they know how to chat. They know how to make a martini. Yeah. And they know how to take care of you. They make the atmosphere. The great thing about eating at the bar with other people is that you don't have to focus on your guests the whole time, right? You can talk to the bartender, you can talk to the person on your left, and you can talk to your guest. And I think that makes for a good social formula, eating at the bar.
It also is one way to get out of the ridiculousness that you need to make a reservation like 2 months in advance to have dinner in New York City. It's another thing that technology has ruined.
You have to go in at 5:00 to get a spot at the bar because it's really hard to get a reservation.
Like, what kind of weirdo like decides where they're going to have dinner 2 months in advance? Strange behavior.
Not this weirdo.
I just don't eat at those places.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave it there. Thanks, guys.
That's it for this episode of People vs. Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.